Good morning and welcome to the Professional Pastors. This is Diane Winbush, your show host, coming to you live in the studio. And I would like to make a couple of announcements before we get started with our guest on today. And, of course, don't forget about our upcoming Women Luncheon that's going to be held on July the 27th. And that's going to be at 10 o'clock a.m. at 4845 Cuba, Millington Road. And that's Millington, Tennessee. And the zip code is 38053. So don't forget about that. Our guest speaker is going to be Dr. and Pastor Sharon Webb. So you don't want to be able to miss that luncheon. And also for our upcoming event on August the 3rd, and that's held at the same location. And for the remainder of the events, you can go to our website at www.stpetersburgglobalministries.org. So today we have our guest in the studio that's going to be speaking with us, and her name is Miss Jasmine Jones. So welcome to the broadcast on today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So tell us a little bit about you. And when I say that, when I ask the guest that, I'm talking about a little bit, not from where you are now, but kind of back up just a little bit from where you were before, and then you work your way up to where you are now.
Okay, can do that.
Okay.
So I am an engineer by day. So in 2015, I had been working in my field out of college for about 3 years. I just graduated with my master's, and I was very focused on academics growing up. So focused that I just thought, like, academics was going to get me a full ride to college, and I forgoed any extracurricular activities. I wasn't super athletic to begin with, but I just I need to focus on my academics, and then I'm going to become the engineer that I want to be. So I did that, and when I finally got to that point in that beginning stages of my career, I just felt unfulfilled. I felt like something was missing, and in the midst of focusing on the beginning stages of my career, I also kind of put my dating life on a backseat as well. So I was like, well, maybe that's the case. Like, I'm not really dating anyone, and I've had a lot of heartbreak. And so I started to just focus on God in that moment in my life, like meditating, praying, trying to ask him, what am I good at? What is my purpose? Because, I like being an engineer, but it doesn't feel like that's all I'm supposed to be in life. So when I started doing that, he revealed to me my talent or enjoyment for writing. And with that, I tied that into my life experience, and I began writing my first book, The Single Lady's Commandments. And then after that, as I was going to speaking engagements and encouraging other singles, I heard so many people come up to me and ask me, how did you start writing your book? Or I started writing my book. How did you finish? And asking for all this advice on how to go about the route of self-publishing. So with that, I decided to help those who had those questions, and that developed into me developing self-publishing packages, one-on-one sessions where I help authors get through that process from the very beginning. So once they have their manuscript, to getting their book in the physical copy in their hands.
Awesome. So basically, you actually had to find yourself first before you was able to, I guess, cater to other individuals' needs.
Right. Exactly. And it helps, as well, having the experience myself, having to speak firsthand of being a self-published author, so I can tie into that experience to help others.
That's awesome, because sometimes when we start out with just one little thing, we can start out with something that is so simple, and then it will launch into something else. And then once others be able to see what it is that we have, they want to grow, I guess, with the individual. I won't say that they want a slice of the pie, but they want to be able to grow with the individual simply because of the success that they see from others. So that's awesome. So what are the benefits of publishing versus licensed copyrights? Because I think back here some years ago, I had an individual that that was on a platform, and it was on a women's empowerment luncheon, and so she was able to bring some of her published books to the event to share with the attendants and what have you. But and I think hers was not self-publishing. I think that she had a publisher to be able to do that for her. So share with the listeners the difference between self-publishing and having your own paid publisher.
Right. So there's really like three options, main options you can go about getting your manuscript out to the public. So you have like the more traditional publishing. You pitch your book or your manuscript to a publishing house, and they decide yay or nay, or if they're going to accept it. Or you can go through a vanity publishing house where you pay to have them publish your book, and typically you might pay a fee up front, or they might give you a certain allotment dollar amount, and you have to sell enough books. For the most part, it's usually on your own until you start to see royalties. Or you can go the self-publishing route where you're basically doing all the work in the back end yourself without like a traditional publishing house or a vanity publishing house, but you own all the rights. So you can still get your book copyrighted. You go through that process as well versus you and a publishing house owning the copyrights to your book. If you self-publish, you own those rights as long as you ensure that you go through those certain legal aspects where no one owns, say, like the identifier for your book. You want to make sure that you do that yourself, so then you for sure own all the rights.
So with self-publishing, and a lot of times individuals, they go through the Amazon, which is a very powerful tool, even with the Kindle Fire, and so. With that, how important, because, with certain other platforms, when you do self-publishing, you can go back and you can add or you can recreate. How important is it for authors and writers to be able to perhaps maybe refresh their book? Because sometimes it can sit on Amazon for a long time, a long length of time, and sometimes the writer or the author may just not have the right topic, or they may, it's not the right topic. They may not have the right images, or they may not have the right cover that to portray what it is that they are trying to get across to their audience. So do you think that it's important for the author or the writer to be able to modify and alter their cover?
I think it's important. I even went through that process with my first book where I revamped my cover because I wanted to basically target an audience that when they see it, it captures their eye. Like it's not something that's an eyesore. So it's like going through that growing process for me of self-publishing on my own. I hit some bumps and bruises where I went through a designer that she was a great designer, but I gave her the initial images. So the images weren't the best quality. So I had to go back and say, okay, let me do this the right way. Let me go through the process of hiring a photographer, hiring models. Like if I really want my book to stand out, like you say, on Amazon or on Kindle, then I want it to be portrayed in the best light. And it's okay. I've talked to many other authors that have done the same thing. They said, I went through this process the first time and it didn't work out, so I went back and I revamped it, and it helped increase their sales. And for me, it helped more people were reaching out to me. It's more than just like looking at your images, it's also to looking at your marketing plan. That's important as well. Like, who are you marketing to? I've gone from marketing more solely in the like singles events or conferences to individuals who have a platform for singles and they want to buy a bulk of books for singles for their event. So I don't have to go through that process of I almost have like someone speaking on my behalf to sell and share my book. So it's important to look at it from both aspects. What is your product? Does it look high quality? And then can others get behind your product? Will they vouch for you?
Mhm. Mhm. A lot of times when individuals are self-publishing, everyone wants to publish a book, whether they're a Christian or whether they're an entrepreneur, whether they are some individual that perhaps maybe just want to start out. You know, it don't have to actually be a Christian. It can be a a corporate America worker, but they don't know where to start. So even with self-publishing, it's easy for some. So how would you say to the listeners, how easy would it be for them to just go in and be able to start that, to be able to start a publishing trend where they write books and different, some individuals just don't write books. Sometimes they may create a child's book, or what have you. So how easy or simple would you say in your terms that it would be for an entrepreneur to be able to start publishing with self-publishing?
Well, I think everyone has like a story to tell. Like you said, they may have a different background. They may be a Christian. They may work in corporate America. But something in their experience, in their life, kind of projects into their purpose. So if it's a book, then they can use that experience to, if you call on your experience to write what you know, I think that's the best route to go. Even though you can research things, and there's things even in my book, because it's biblical-based, that I had to do some research and make sure that the information I'm sharing is accurate. So if you do that, if you speak on your experience, I think that's half of the battle. And then living in the age that we're in, we have so many resources on the Internet. You have other authors or friends who probably are authors, because everyone, like you said, in a sense, everyone wants to write a book or has a book inside of them. So you likely know someone or know of someone who has written a book, and you can always draw on their experience too to help you with that process. So I would say, like, today it's a lot easier. That's why I think you see so many people self-publishing. But you have to have, like, that motivation behind it, and you have to think about your time and your lifestyle. If you're, like, a mother of 3 children and married and you're running a corporate job, you may not want to go through that process of doing that research. You may want to go the route, for example, with my business, where I help you through that process. So all you have to be concerned about is getting that manuscript ready. And then you save that time. I think that's really key when you're an entrepreneur. What do you want to spend money on to help you save time? What do you want to go through yourself as far as doing the research? You have to, like, weigh those balances.
Awesome. Even with publishing a book, sometimes an individual's ideas, their thoughts can be all over the place, if you will, because it's a unique tool where some platforms have provided self-publishing for authors or beginning authors or, intermediate authors or even expert authors. So how important would you say that it is for the author to be able to get someone to proofread behind their manuscript of what they have written? I know I have read some books, some literatures from self-publishers, and it's not to be critical or anything like that, but even with that, the words were off, the phrases were off, some of the content was misspelled, some of the punctuation was not put in the right place, and sometimes, like I state, and especially if some things are posted on Amazon and Kindle as well, they have options to be able to leave comments, and so that's that's kind of like critical, for some individuals. So how important would you say, in your terms, that it is important to hire? Because some individuals are not just going to proofread a manuscript for free. So how important is it, and also how long do they need to go in and to plan for that process? Because sometimes, proofreaders can, charge up, a pretty good fee, for that type of work. So how long do they need to plan for the financial part? And in your terms, how important is it for an freelance author, to be able to go in and hire a proofreader?
So if you're an English literature major or you've been writing all your life, you still need a proofreader, or preferably an editor, like a line-by-line editor. Because the proofreader will essentially just, go through your book, read it. They might pull out, like, glances of things, like things that are very glaring that you have issues with, but they're not going to go line by line and say, okay, you should edit this, you should change this. It's more so, it's like a higher level review versus a line-by-line editor is going to go in depth into your book or your manuscript and point out the nuances they see, and they're going to look at it from a holistic approach too, and say, okay, well, maybe you shared this line in chapter 1. Now you're just repeating it in chapter 2. Can you change this to share where it makes the story flow more? So it's a must to have an editor, especially if you're going the self-publishing route. Like you said, I've read books as well for those who have self-published, and you'll see, like, not all the time it's like a whole lot of issues, but they'll be like, oh, okay, I see what they meant to say there. Maybe the word was spelled wrong, or they said something a little off. And you really don't want to have that, because it can be reflected in your reviews on Amazon or Goodreads. I have a friend, she went the self-publishing route, and she had some feedback from someone close to her. They say, yeah, it's good, but, there were some errors in there. And then I think, like she said it from a place to just, make her aware, like this, that you may want to go back, kind of like we were speaking to refreshing the images, the cover of your book. You want to look also into refreshing, going back and reviewing it again and saying, okay, well, now maybe I can get a pass. If I haven't got an editor, I can do it now, or I can get a second pass from another editor to review your book. And then speaking as far as like timing is concerned and the financial aspect, the editors that I've worked with, they go through 2 passes of editing my book. They will first do an initial sweep where they're just tracking edits and changes. Then I have the opportunity to go through those changes, identify what I would like to revise, what I think I might go back to them and say, okay, well, this is what I was trying to say here. Like, does it make sense? Kind of bounce those ideas off of them. And then after you accept or reject those changes, they'll go through it again, and they'll clean up your manuscript so it'll be prepared and ready for print. But even then, because some people, authors make that mistake where they're just like, okay, now it's ready. The editor went through it, and it's clean now. But you still need to go back and look at it again, because they're human too, and they can make mistakes. So there are things that you can go back and just confirm, like what you asked them to change, it is reflected in there properly. And it's all types of, I guess, ranges you can go as far as how much you want to pay for an editor. I've heard of some people paying like $30 for an editor, like someone who maybe is just in school. I mean, you have to, vet their work and ensure that they really are going to do what you want them to do. But it's really, in a sense, no excuse financially for not getting an editor at all, because, like you said, it could be very expensive. But there are some who may be those English literature majors. Maybe they're in junior or senior year, so they have that experience. They just need to actually, fill it out. Like, they have the background, but they need to get that experience,
Absolutely, absolutely. So we're going to go to the next segment, and the next segment we want to talk about of your career as a social media marketing strategist. And so even with that, with business owners, entrepreneurs, it's a very resourceful tool for individuals to be able to market. And so share just a few tips, not all of your expertise, because that's the purpose of the listener that's listening on the podcast, for them to be able to follow you, which will, allow you to provide that information at the end of the show. But that's their responsibility to follow you and get all the rest of the tools and nuggets that that may, come with your brand. So share just a couple of tips of how social media marketing can affect an individual when they're trying to market their brand, because some people don't see any validity in it. They don't, because they don't know how to work it, they don't understand it, or perhaps maybe they shoot one pitch out there. They expect something to turn over for them overnight and things like that, and nobody knows their name. They don't know where they came from. They don't know their town, and so sometimes I think we get confused in that aspect. So I'm going to be quiet. I'm going to let you bring the tips to the listeners in regards to how effective that can be for their marketing brand.
Yes, so first it's important to understand who is your audience. Most of my audience are millennials, and a lot of millennials are on Instagram. So even though I have Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, I focus really heavily on my Instagram because that's where my primary audience is. So you need to understand that. And then consistency is important. And I can even do a little better with this, but I try my best. As far as you just want to make sure that you're posting on a regular basis. Because even with any social media platform, if you don't post for a certain amount of days, let's say you post every day for 2 weeks, and then you don't post again for another 2 weeks, what the social media algorithms do in that case, you may have been showing in those 14 days, your posts were showing to all of your audience, let's say, for example. But if you take a break for 2 weeks, they look at that and they're like, okay, well, let's just share it to some of her audience or some of his audience now because he hasn't been posting, so they're probably not even as engaged with them anymore because they were consistent. And you don't have to necessarily post every day, but just make sure you have some consistency in your posting. And then not just consistency in how often you post, but what you post. Would your audience identify your post just by seeing it, not seeing your name or your business name next to your post? Would they be like, oh, I know that's the Christian podcast post because I see that they post with their logo on each image, or they use the same type of font or coloring. So that's important as well. And then you want to ensure that you're building up your following. So there's ways you can do that from an organic approach, and it can take some time because you need to be engaged with your audience and even the audience of your audience. So those who follow them or people who follow someone who has a similar niche or business to you. So those are just a few things. I didn't go too much in detail, or that was just enough to give them some, a few tips, what they can do to improve their social media platforms.
Okay, perfect. So I guess it's basically what platform, because that's what's going to be the next question, but I think that you answered it in regards to digital platforms, which one brings the best rewards for marketing. And so in your aspect of what you do, it's going to be the Instagram. So I guess it would be that would depend on the individual and where the strongest audience is from the entrepreneur itself.
Right, and what their business niche is, they want to see what social media platform is their audience on? Like, Facebook probably would be, if like Instagram didn't exist, I would probably go to Facebook next for my audience, because I do have like millennial audiences on Facebook. But I also find it more challenging in my case to, at least in the realm of my books, I have other businesses that do better on Facebook than they do on Instagram. But for my books, because they're targeted millennials, that's where I do most of my target marketing on Instagram for that reason.
Okay. So what type of impact? Because we got just about a few more minutes, about 5 more minutes. So what type of impact you would like for the listeners to take away with them in regards to as a social media strategist, as a speaker, as well as a published author? What would you want the listeners to grab from this interview on today about you?
So I would say, I mean, everyone likes to think they're special and they're amazing, because we are, because God created us. But
correct.
I would like to say, like, I'm no different than you. Just like how I was feeling the way I was in 2015 and not feeling fulfilled in my life. And there's moments even now that I might feel that way. And I'm like, okay, well, what do I need to do differently? How can I change my life to target that purpose that's in me? And the same goes for any other entrepreneur or someone who's aspiring to be an entrepreneur. You have something inside of you. You have these talents, these dreams, and these visions. It's just a matter of how you go about expressing those. It can be through a book. It can be through social media. You can be a speaker. You may have a business on the side while you still work your day job, or maybe you go full in and decide, I'm going to be a full-time entrepreneur. So I guess I would like your listeners to see me as just an example of what you can do, but this is not a limit. And whatever you have inside of you, you can foster those things, seek God, and wait for the answers too. Because when God told me to write a book, I was like, are you sure? And especially in the genre that my book is in, because it bridges essentially secular music with biblical scripture. And some people are just like, how did you do that? Or, are you sure you were supposed to do that? And I had to ask God the same thing, like, is this what you want me to do? So, I mean, you have to wait for the answers, too, to see and get that confirmation for yourself for the dreams that you have in you. And also you have to write out a plan, too. You can't just, like, go right into, like, oh, I'm going to make it happen, and then you don't necessarily have a step-by-step way to get there. And that plan can change. It doesn't mean, like, oh, I wrote it down, this is how it has to be, because life happens. So when you're feeling like, maybe like, for example, some people have come up to me, they have a book, and they're like, how did you finish your book? Because I don't know how to go about it. Make a plan for yourself, something that fits for you, so that you can finish that book and stay motivated in doing so.
Awesome. Because, you know, sometimes even with this broadcast, the professional pastors, we bring individuals on that are experts in business as well. And so it's to help Christians to be able to understand that success is not bad. A lot of times we, some people view it as, it's, God is not about money and things like that. Well, he is, according to the scripture. You know, it teaches us in Deuteronomy that it is he that give us the prosperity to get this wealth. So it is. That's what he's about. And so I totally agree with you when you stated that, you have to go to God, and then sometimes some things will happen, and you be like, wait a minute, did you tell me to do that? And so, and when I first got started, just a little small sample about me. when I first got started with what I was doing with women, it first started out as a Christian platform. And then he was like, okay, let's go to women. I'm like, who, you talking to me? And so sometimes we can get confused. We can get confused thinking that this is not the Lord. He did not tell me to do this, because sometimes we're I guess we're so accustomed to tradition, and if we don't have not experienced a specific thing, we'll think it's not God. We'll think it's the enemy or the devil, as some of the individuals, stated in what's in the Word of God too. So that's the reason why I try to bring both sides to women, both sides to men, to let the Christians know that God does want us to be successful. There's no way that we're going to be prosperous unless we have to use the gift that has been given to us. The gift may not always be in the church. It may be baking. It may be cooking. You may be a six-figure dollar individual like Martha Stewart or something like that. But, we have to be able to have an open mind. That's what I'm looking for right there. We have to have an open mind to be willing to hear. And so that's kind of how I got started. So I was just wanted to piggyback on what you had said, because that's the way kind of some of the things that I had stated. I'm like, no, you're not talking to me, because these are secular people. How can I be able to interact with them and then be able to be a Christian? But if we wait, like you stated, we wait for the answer. He will coach us. He will travel with us mentally and share with us and teach us how to be able to do both sides of the fence without tarnishing our Christian mantle, if I can be able to say it that way. So that's the reason why I come on the, try to bring individuals on the show that's on both sides, that drinks out of both sides of the cup, not just one side, just because they're a pastor or preacher or evangelist. We go in there and we talk to Christians that have built businesses, and so other individuals can open up their eyes, so they can open up their eyes and be able to understand that, yes, God wants us to be more than enough, or He wants us to be He wants to be more than enough for us. So sometimes I think we can become stifled in some areas. So I'm so thankful that you brought that out, and so that's the reason why I had to elaborate on that, because sometimes we can become have a closed mind because we don't know. So with that being said, tell us and talk to the listeners, share with the listeners about your publications, about any social media platforms that they can be able to follow you on, any website links that you would like to share, and any upcoming speaking events that you would like to share with the listeners so that can be helpful for them.
Okay. So I am on Instagram and Facebook at JasmineJones.co. That's C-O. And on Twitter, Jasmine Jones Co. I have a website, www.jasminejones.co, where you can find my books, The Single Lady's Commandments and The Gentleman's Commandments. Also have a Single Lady's Commandments journal and a short story called 911 Emergency Crisis. And all of those books can be found on Amazon, also on Amazon Kindle. So if you want to reach out to me regarding self-publishing, helping you through that process, you can either visit my website or you can email me at info@jasminejones.co.
Perfect. Ladies and gentlemen, we have had Jasmine Jones on the show on today, who has provided an exceptional job at giving us tools and resources on social media marketing, how to be able to find your audience, and what was the best platform for her where she interacts the most, as well as self-publishing as an author, as well as she shared some tools with all of us as to how to be effective in regards to proofreading and copywriting. These things are important. You can be successful. You can be an entrepreneur. You can love God, and you can be a Christian. Thank you so much, Jasmine, for taking the opportunity to be our guest on today on The Professional Pastors.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Great. So for all upcoming events, listeners, just go to our website at www.saint, and that's spelled all the way out as SAINT, PetersburgGlobalMinistries.org. This is Diane Winbush, and it has been a pleasure being your host on today. Go to our website to find out who will be our next guest. That's coming up on Tuesday at 10 o'clock a.m. Central Standard Time. Have a great day.